Hello and welcome to today's webinar, How External Service Providers Can Lower Costs, Reduce Risk, and Speed Up CMMC Compliance. Today's presentation is brought to you jointly by NeoSystems and SNC Defensible Security. I'm Don Carnevale, Marketing Director at NeoSystems, and I'll be the moderator for today's event. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can enter them into the Q&A area within Zoom. We will have some time at the end of the presentation to answer your questions. Also, we will make the webinar recording and presentation slides available to all registrants in the coming days. Now I'd like to introduce the host for today's discussion, Megan Kennett from NeoSystems. Megan?
Hey, Don, thank you. And thank you to everybody who's joining us today. My name is Megan Kennett, and I'm honored to be the host of today's webinar, How ESPs Can Lower Costs, Reduce Risk, and Speed Up CMMC Compliance. All right, so allow me to kick things off and make introductions. Again, as I said, I'm Megan, Product Marketing Manager for CMMC Solutions at NeoSystems, certified CMMC professional with a career centered in IT, cybersecurity, marketing, and business development. I've been dedicated to helping defense contractors navigate CMMC compliance, strengthen their security, and simplify the complex. At NeoSystems, we are experts who live and breathe compliance reporting and regulatory requirements so our clients don't have to. We provide a range of IT and information security managed services and offer organizations an accelerated, low-risk, affordable path to CMMC compliance. I'm pleased to be joined by Mr. Robert Doherty of SNC Defensible Security today. And for those of you who aren't familiar, Sierra Nevada Company is at the forefront of innovation, delivering groundbreaking solutions in aerospace, defense, and space systems. With a legacy of over 60 years, SNC is committed to pushing the boundaries of technology to make the world safer and more connected. Their cutting-edge products and services range from satellite systems and space exploration vehicles to cybersecurity and electronic warfare solutions. SNC is passionate about driving progress and creating a future where the impossible becomes possible. Today, we'll be looking at their world-class cybersecurity offering called Defensible Security, a security operations center as a service that is tailored to meet the unique cybersecurity and compliance needs of defense contractors. Defensible Security's motto is by defense, for defense. Robert, if you would, take a minute and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Megan, and thanks for hosting us today. Exciting opportunity to go over all of the benefits of using ESPs. Full disclosure, we are an ESP as well as a consumer of ESPs. So SNC is a cleared defense contractor. I'll get into some of our history a little later in the presentation. I've been with the organization over 7 years now, serving as the Chief Security Officer. So it's a privilege to lead this world-class team that we have here. We've really built a truly world-class capability and program, security program here at SNC that has been recognized by the Defense Counterintelligence Security Agency as being one of the top 1% of all security programs within the DIB. So very proud of the team that we have and all the hard work that we put in over the last 7 years to get us there. But today we'll be talking about ESPs, and then we'll be talking about the service that we offer to help other defense companies, as well as protect ourselves, called Defensible Security.
Fantastic.
Back over to you, Megan. Thanks for the intro.
Thank you, Robert. We've got a lot of ground to cover today. So CMMC is a big challenge. It's complex, evolving, it requires real accountability. But the right external service provider can help lower those costs, reduce your risk, and accelerate your compliance journey if you choose wisely. So today we're going to break down the good, the bad, and the ugly of meeting CMMC requirements. We're going to explore the different flavors of ESPs and their role in the defense industrial base. We're going to talk about the concept of ESP as a solution to meeting those challenges and the customer responsibility matrix as an accountability tool. We'll also discuss what makes an ESP truly effective. So how do you spot the red flags before you sign on the dotted line? Let's get started. Meeting CMMC compliance is a shared struggle in the government contracting world, and it's not just red tape. By 2025, if you manage CUI yet you're not getting certified, you're not competing. Meanwhile, cyber threats are surging, and if you handle CUI, congratulations, you're probably a target. The real challenge, most organizations are drowning in compliance complexity with nowhere near the in-house expertise to stay ahead. And the kicker, if you can't get compliant, you're riding the bench while the competition plays ball. So the real question is, how do you get your security act together now without breaking the bank on CMMC compliance? Let's dive in. When we take a look at what's needed to comply within the NIST 800-171A standard, a defense contractor has to implement 110 security requirements across 14 domain families. Each requirement includes specific assessment objectives. And if you miss the right ones, depending on the requirement, it can mean the difference between success and failure of your CMMC assessment. The matrix looks like this. But you should feel optimistic because good help is available. So what are we actually talking about when we say ESPs? I mean, what are they? You gotta love the DoD vernacular. The term ESP was defined in the final CMMC rule and specifically applies to external service providers who are storing, processing, or transmitting CUI or security protection data, or SPD. So the term security protection data was introduced and clarified by the final CMMC rule, and it's important to understand the distinction. As a refresher, SPD refers to information stored and processed by security protection assets that provide security capabilities to a contractor's CMMC scope. It includes security relevant configuration data, log files, data related to your vulnerability status, even passwords used to access the in-scope systems. Information which, if disclosed, could aid an adversary in compromising your system. And in the context of level 2 CMMC assessments, SPD is considered in scope. And as a government contractor, you must identify and safeguard it. Ensure all those security assets are identified and they meet the NIST 800-171 requirements. Speaking of ice cream, let's now explore the typical roles and the value of the top 3 flavors of ESPs. Your cloud service provider, your managed security service provider, and your managed service provider. So when we talk about an external service provider delivering value in the terms of saving money, it kind of sounds counterintuitive, right? I mean, you're bringing in an additional resource or 2 or 3. So one should expect to pay more, right? Well, not necessarily. So when you leverage the right ESP, they're going to offer you a faster, proven path forward, one that many businesses are probably already using for the same purpose. So it's not just about outsourcing anymore, it becomes a growth strategy. And instead of spending months or years building compliance and cybersecurity capabilities in-house, you can plug into a provider that's already done all the hard work. They live, they breathe, they sleep GovCon compliance. They have the secure systems and processes in place. And at the end of the day, you can build this from scratch if you want, or you can tap into a proven solution that's move-in ready. The choice is yours. So what should you expect from an ESP, you might ask? So think about proven solutions. What is it, proven documentation that's compliant. Their tools have been vetted for CMMC compliance. This all minimizes your risk. Their experience, they've done this before. They can help you avoid those common pitfalls and mistakes. They're adaptable. They have built these systems for compliance, flexibility, and scalability. And they stay on top of CMMC and its evolving updates so that you can focus on growing your business. So the bottom line is you get compliant faster with less risk and fewer headaches. So choosing an ESP kind of reminds me of choosing an airline. I mean, we've all been tempted before by the rock bottom price of an ultra low cost carrier, only to find out later that the carry-ons, the seats, the snacks, the Wi-Fi are all added fees. it really adds up. And suddenly what seemed like a really good deal leaves you nickel and dimed at every turn. And there you are left with buyer's remorse. So you probably should have chosen the legacy carrier that offers the all-inclusive rate, right? So the same applies with your ESPs. You really need to ask yourself, is your ESP a full service provider or more of a do-it-yourself kind of shop? So to avoid these pitfalls, you should demand clarity and ensure the responsibilities that are left up to you are within your capabilities. Now that we know what an ESP is, let's look at the customer responsibility matrix. So as an example, NIST 800-171 security requirement 343, where it asks you to track, review, approve, disapprove, and log changes to organizational systems. You know, it's that little pesky little requirement under configuration management. Maybe your ESP claims they are fully responsible for ensuring that this is met. And maybe they are, but have you seen the evidence? And it's really important that you are clear on who's doing what. Beyond the policies on paper, ask for the real documented evidence. Make sure that these things are being done every time a change impacts your system's baseline configuration. This is what an assessor is going to ask for. And another good analogy of the CRM is a family tour chart. So whether you're responsible for installing the security alarm, the cameras, locking the house up at night, or preparing for a home inspection, it's important to know who's responsible for what. And at the end of the day, it's still your house and you're fully responsible, even if somebody else helps. So the last thing you want is, as you approach your assessment, is a dispute between you and your service provider on who's actually doing what. So the CRM is a tool to help prevent that finger pointing or the famous, I thought you were handling that sort of situation. Get it in writing, ask for the CRM. Now let's explore the next flavor of ESP, your cloud service provider. Robert, do you mind breaking this one down for everybody?
Absolutely. Thank you. And on the last slide, you never want to have that conversation for the first time in front of your assessors or the people that are certifying you or a government customer. So highly recommend that you understand exactly what you're on the hook for and what your service provider is providing through that CRM. We'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end of the presentation. So CSPs, cloud service providers have been around for quite some time now, starting in the early 2000s. If you are a Gmail user, if you've used Google Drive, other services like that, that's all cloud-based. Again, been around for now a couple of decades. And even within the intelligence community, they have had cloud-based services since about 2014. So CIA and NSA established their own internal cloud services back about that time frame. So they've been around for quite some time now and very mature. One of the common things that I run into in talking to other folks within the DIB is there's still this misunderstanding that defense contractors can't use a cloud service provider because we're dealing with customer sensitive information, or now CUI. But that's not the case at all. But the key to that is you need to understand exactly what type of information you're going to be processing, storing, or transmitting through those cloud-based services. So a really easy rule of thumb, and I'm not going to get a whole lot of down into the impact levels, especially impact level 2 and 4, and the differences for what CUI and what cloud service offerings you can use. But if it's CUI, you cannot put it on a public-facing website. That would be a no-no. You don't do that. So when thinking about these cloud service providers, if it's cloud shared services and you're in a shared environment, it's not okay for CUI. So you need to have dedicated resources for your use when you're storing, processing, or transmitting CUI. And then the easiest way to go about doing that is pick a service provider that is FedRAMP authorized. So they've gone through a very extensive process to achieve that certification. You have to have a government, a federal entity to sponsor you through that. It's months long in some cases. I've seen it take up to a year or more to be able to get that. But for defense contractors like us, it really means that they've gone through all of that hard work. It streamlines the process, accelerates deployment and use of those services, and you get security assurance, all the compliance with federal regulations, standardization and consistency, cost and time efficiency, continuous monitoring, and they have expertise in handling federal data. So FedRAMP is the way to go. And there are 3 levels with that. Again, we're not going to get into a whole lot of detail on those. But if you're dealing typically with ITAR or export control related information within your CUI portfolio, it's always best to go with a FedRAMP High authorized service. And I'll talk about a couple of services here in just a minute. We can have a debate about, whether that's hard and fast in a regulation or not. But as a company, SNC made a decision back starting in 2019 that we were not going to take the risk of using commercial-based services specifically for that reason. We didn't want to take the chance that we'd have a data spill over into something that we could not clean up. So we have been in and using FedRAMP High services now for quite some time. Okay, so 3 different flavors. I'm going to touch on these real quick. All the major cloud-based services offer these. So if you're thinking about Microsoft Azure Government Compute Cloud, they call it GCC High. AWS GovCloud has been around a little longer than pretty much all of them. Google Cloud now has FedRAMP High service offering, and then Oracle also has their Cloud for Government, I believe is what they call it. But they all offer infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. And there are also other services like ServiceNow. If you're using that platform, it's available as a FedRAMP authorized service. HR systems like Workday and others are also available as FedRAMP authorized services. So as a defense contractor, again, my recommendation to you would be to look at those FedRAMP authorized services versus just a pure commercial offering. So on the infrastructure as a service, think of this as just bare metal. If we were to use the analogy, if we were building something, somebody would provide a piece of land. They would provide the utilities like water, power, sewer for that property. You would be responsible for all of the construction, sourcing all the materials and everything to build the building. So essentially building the facility from the ground up on a site that they provide the basic utility connections to. So what you get beyond the physical data center itself, again, basic building blocks such as bare metal systems for operating systems, storage and network infrastructure. You're responsible for installing all the operating systems, patching, managing, making sure that all the applications and everything run smoothly. So infrastructure as a service is a lot of work if you decide to go that route. So kind of next up, let's think of if we were leasing a fully constructed office building, but you get to customize the interior. You get to choose the furniture, what goes on the walls, the color of the paint, what the landscaping looks like outside. So you get a platform that includes all the servers, the storage, networking, and the operating systems and the middleware and all the development tools to run that. And then you get to focus on developing and deploying and managing your applications and services without having to worry about maintaining the security and patching of all that underlying infrastructure. And software as a service, think of it this way: if we were to go out and get a condo or a house completely fully furnished, everything's in it from the kitchen, to the linen. You don't have to bring anything with you. You just get to live and use, everything that's in that house. So in similar fashion, the service provider will provide all the underlying infrastructure, the applications, and then typically what you're on the hook for is managing and authorizing access for those applications. But they pretty much take care of everything, and you don't have to worry about supporting any of that. So that's kind of a high-level overview of what a CSP is. And again, highly recommend you go take a look at the FedRAMP marketplace. Quick search will show you, if you're wondering whether something is FedRAMP authorized or not, that's where you should go. And then within the cloud service providers themselves, they will typically have a storefront or a marketplace where you can search for FedRAMP authorized services as well. So that's a good place to start.
Excellent point, Robert. Thank you. As an example and an add-on to Robert's discussion, this is a CRM provided by one of our cloud service providers who you may or may not have heard of, Keeper Security. And while Keeper Security is a great cloud solution for enterprise password management, as it securely stores and transmits passwords using FIPS 140-2 validated encryption, It does a lot of really great things and cool things, and I won't get into the weeds on that, but it's important to note that every CSP will provide different services, and they all have to meet the same requirements under the CMMC program as CSPs. So as Robert noted, they have to be FedRAMP compliant. They need to be in the FedRAMP marketplace. And if they store, process, or transmit CUI, they need to be FIPS 140-2 validated cryptography standards. They have to meet that. So another reason why asking for the customer responsibility matrix is so critical to your success. All right, on to the next flavor of ESPs, the MSP. In the context of CMMC, a managed service provider is a third-party entity that delivers a range of IT and cybersecurity services to organizations within the defense industrial base. MSPs play a critical role in the protection of CUI and FCI by implementing necessary security controls and procedures to safeguard DoD data. And if any of their capabilities handle CUI, they are subject to being assessed at CMMC level 2. It's important to note that they're only an ESP if they're handling CUI or that specialized security protection data on behalf of the contractor, and their services are considered in scope for the assessment. So many organizations hire MSPs to handle the daily management services, IT, allowing them to focus on scaling their core business without worrying about system downtime or service interruptions, and most importantly, the nitty-gritty of CMMC compliance. MSPs are often managing your IT infrastructure, meeting strict compliance requirements, functioning as an extension of your team, and delivering those services through a predictive subscription-based model. And that's important to know. These services, they include a lot. Sometimes every MSP is going to provide different services, of course. Some, not all MSPs are created equal, but it's important also to know what it looks like when it's done right. So I want you to imagine stepping into a grand concert hall. The lights are dim, the audience filled with government oversight bodies, prime contractors, and the DoD all waiting in anticipation. On stage, an orchestra of security tools and processes, firewalls, SIM, endpoint protection, access controls, incident response, all waiting for direction. And at the center, orchestrating it all, is the maestro, the MSP. With NIST 800-171 as the sheet music, the MSP stands on the podium, baton in hand, ensuring every section plays in sync. Firewalls keep tempo with access controls, the SIM analyzes every note, and incident response is ready for the unexpected crescendo. The MSP is carefully orchestrating all the people, the technologies, the tools, the services, and the requirements. And when it's done correctly, it's an absolutely harmonious performance, secure, responsive, and audit ready. But without the right MSP, orchestra falls into chaos, missed notes happen, overlapping roles, and worst of all, gaps in compliance, availability, and security. So when we look at the requirements being provided by an MSP, again, not all MSPs are created equal. This customer responsibility matrix belongs to NeoSystems and represents the requirements shared or fully provided by our CMMC managed services offering. Now I'll turn it over to our strategic security partner, Robert, with S&C Defensible Security, who's going to introduce the concept of the MSSP, our final flavor of ESPs, and how that solution is different.
Thanks, Megan. And let's be sure to touch on, well, I'll come back to that in just a minute. Sorry, I'll get over to the MSSP stuff, but we'll have time for questions, and we've got a couple follow-on things at the end. So again, we're talking about somebody other than you doing something for you. So the same concept for a managed security service provider. Again, somebody that's providing cybersecurity monitoring services, and it really runs the gamut in scale of from very little to basically all encompassing of what they cover. So at the minimum, they should be providing alerting and monitoring using your security event monitoring system. So they either have access into that platform or they're managing for you, or they're ingesting logs from your system into theirs, and then providing that type of service to you. So they can provide things in additional services such as penetration testing, external attack surface monitoring, and compliance support, all managed by a team of cybersecurity experts. And this allows you to focus again on your business. You don't have to worry as much about what's happening to your perimeter and what's going on inside your network. But if we look at basic MSSP services, we have gone through several in the past couple of years to arrive to where we're at by providing our own service. But basic services are simply standard business hours, Monday through Friday. You typically have to bring all of the tools with you. You will give them access into your tools, your SIM platform. And then there's typically no proactive threat hunting. They're just waiting for an alert to go off. There's some kind of automated system, and then they will tell you that something happened with your network. So they're typically not very fast. And for defense contractors, especially around advanced persistent threat and nation-state threat actors, time is not our friend. So we need to be able to respond to things very, very quickly to limit damage once an incursion or a breach has occurred. But basic MSSP services are just exactly what they sound like. They're super basic. The bare minimum of providing monitoring and alerting. So if we look at the next one, I'd call kind of intermediate MSSP services. They typically offer more than standard business hours, usually 24/7, 365. They may use your SIM, or they might provide management or tuning for it, or they may use theirs and then ingest logs again from yours to theirs. They're typically not specialized. They provide support for a large variety of cybersecurity tools, a large number or different types of SIMs. We've seen it where some pretty much will state that they can support any SIM that's out there on the market. So they're not very specialized. They might provide some intrusion detection and prevention support, maybe some vulnerability management, and some EDR or endpoint detection and response managing or some tools. Some of the larger ones that provide intermediate services will provide the EDR tools as well and deploy those into your environment and include that in their monitoring services. So you also, with the kind of intermediate, you start to see coverage for cloud-based services in your cloud-based environments as well. And if we're looking more towards the advanced MSSP services, and this is where I'd really recommend that as a defense contractor, you take a serious look at. They're on the commercial side, they're typically larger, but they also use a follow the sun model, and I'll talk about that here in just a minute, why that's a concern, meaning their support is global. So as the sun goes, the people that come online to support you may be in a different country. They may provide dedicated account team or an account manager. They typically will provide threat intelligence from various sources, and they will proactively hunt for threats within your environment and look for anomalous behavior, stuff that may be, there may not be a known zero-day attack for, or a signature for an attack. They will also provide incident response services depending on your needs. They can come in to handle an incident from start to finish, or provide you with just the basics so that your team will have kind of a force multiplier or additional people to help with forensic analysis and cleanup and things like that. They're typically focused more on advanced threat protection against advanced threat actors. And then they, again, also will provide some MDR, managed detection response. And then with the more advanced services, they should be more familiar with your specific compliance and risk management needs. So they're familiar with, if you're in healthcare, HIPAA, PCI, SOC, certification, things of that nature, depending on the industry that you work in. But for us, as defense contractors, you really should be looking for somebody that's familiar with this industry and not just a generic commercial provider. They will also provide, again, cloud-based solutions, typically in being able to cover everything from cloud-based to on-prem, so they can cover hybrid. But my observations with the commercial providers, in our direct experience with them, is they have a high turnover rate. So there are constantly people churning through on the analyst side, and the provider that we were using previous to building our own service, we were getting a new account manager almost every quarter. So we had a lot of churn, and I don't know what the cause of that is, other than it may be difficult to retain staff, train people, and that they also may be using contractors or other means to staff those organizations. But let's talk about a couple things of what to be on the lookout for. And I had mentioned kind of the follow the sun model. Megan, could you go to the next slide?
Sure thing.
Yeah, we were talking about them not all being created equal, and going from kind of the basic to the more advanced. But if they use a follow the sun model, they're going to have foreign nationals that have access to your security protected data. They may not have access to your CUI, but that is something that you need to pay attention to. So as a defense contractor, I'd recommend looking for US-based, US persons, staffed MSSPs to take care of you. Something we're also seeing is there are quite a few that are storefronts, or they might white label somebody else's service. So they may claim to have defense industry experience, but in fact, they are using a commercial provider behind the scenes. They just put a storefront in front of that or a white label and they call it something else. We're also seeing a lot of claims here in the past year, especially with AI being kind of forefront in the news, that SOCs can be replaced by AI. We are not seeing that at all. We are currently using quite a bit of artificial intelligence and machine learning, but we're really focused on agents right now. And so an agent would be a small piece of AI that can automate something that, say, a level 1 analyst has to do that's fairly repetitive. We get an email that comes in that's suspicious, and they have to go take a look at that and look through a bunch of data and look at different systems to determine whether or not that email is in fact bad or not. We're training agents to be able to offload that from the analyst, so the analyst can then focus on higher level work. Another concern is a defense contractor. We're seeing a lot of these providers use remote workers. So if somebody is working from home, that means your environment has now been extended to somebody else's residence for which you have no control or no visibility. So you need to ask when you're, the provider, do you use remote workers or all inside a secure facility? And then we're seeing quite a bit of a lack of specific industry expertise when it comes to the DIB. A lot of companies are kind of like trying to jump on the bandwagon right now, and then claim that their voluntary assessments like SOC 1 or 2 or others will basically be the same thing as CMMC level 2. It is not. Those are voluntary standards. They are not requirements. So just be careful when somebody is saying, no, well, we've got this certification, so therefore it should equal CMMC. It definitely does not. And then especially for everybody on the call, if you're in the DIB, as Megan said earlier, if you don't know it right now, you are being attacked 24/7, 365. We see millions of attempts every day on our networks by foreign threat actors. And we can map that down to where they're coming from, to the street address in many cases. And the top threat actors, as you can imagine, are China, North Korea, Iran, and Russia. So we have baselines of what normal looks like for them as they come after us every day. But for us, that is probably the thing that you should be most concerned about, is somebody's ability to be able to counter these nation state threat actors. So that's kind of some of the stuff to be on the lookout for. If I can real quick, Megan, do you have a slide for S&C, and I can talk about our background a little bit? And then I forgot about the responsibility matrix. I apologize, but we, again, with a partnership with NeoSystems, we cover a large portion of the security controls, again, so that you don't have to worry about not meeting those requirements or those controls. So S&C, oh, go ahead, Megan, I'm sorry.
And then some on top of what's required, right?
Correct. Yep. So as Megan in her nice introduction earlier, S&C has been around for quite some time. So we celebrated our 60th year of operation last year. We're in locations all over the U.S. There you can see the map. We also have operations and subsidiaries in England, Germany, Australia, and Turkey. We have over 5,000 people worldwide. We have people deployed downrange supporting warfighters. one of the things that I'm really super proud of with S&C as a veteran myself, we have the largest proportion of veterans employed compared to any other defense contractor in industry here at S&C. So we have 34% of our workforce are veterans. And that means a lot to us because essentially we feel like we're still carrying on the mission that we did, when we were wearing the uniform.
Absolutely.
Over the years, we've had a bunch of successful acquisitions to be able to help us grow. And our revenues are actually, let's say, above the 2.2 billion mark for last year. So we're really on a great growth trajectory. And if you do a quick search after the call, recommend just doing a search on SAOC, Survivable Airborne Operations Center. That'll show you one of the capabilities that we're building. And I won't go into a lot of detail. I'll just let you go take a look at that. But for defensible specifically, just a quick backstory. We started this. What really was a DFAR 7012 journey back in early 2018, after 7012 became a requirement in December of 2017. And we set out on what at that point what we had figured was going to take us a couple of years to be fully compliant because we have a large enterprise. We have a lot of legacy systems. We have platforms and labs supporting very, very long-term contracts for things like jet fighters and the ability to land on aircraft carriers. So things that we can't really mess with too much. We still have to protect and secure all those environments. So again, we came up with this plan. We're well on the path to implementing that plan. And then 2019, two things happened. One, this conversation about CMMC started to come up. So we started to pay attention to that because thankfully we'd started to pay attention to DFARS before it actually became a requirement. Like, okay, what does this change for us? From the trajectory we're on, are there any differences that we need to pay attention to, between the requirements? So we kind of pivoted that on that. And then later that year, I'm thinking it was probably around the August-September timeframe, we received our first DCMA DIPCAC notice letter, official formal memo from DIPCAC saying that they were going to come on site. They were giving us a few months advance warning. They were going to come on site and assess us against NIST 800-171 and what they call a high confidence assessment. So this is not voluntary. This is not part of like the voluntary joint surveillance program, anything like that. So that changed things for us significantly. We then had to pivot. Like, we don't have several years. We essentially have less than a year to get our compliance game to where it needed to be. And so part of that, and to alleviate some stress on the team, we looked at offloading kind of our SOC capability to a commercial provider. We did that, and that allowed us to focus on getting all of our systems to where they needed to be for the DIPCAC team to come on site. They came on site in March of 2020, just before all the COVID travel restrictions started to happen. They were on site a full week, and we didn't receive a perfect score. So our score the first time was a 107 out of 110, and we had missed the exact thing that Megan had talked about earlier with the FIPS cryptography. We could find out that gets a lot of people because it may be one platform that you've missed and you didn't account for in a POAM that you're trying to fix, and they, to their credit, they found it. So we didn't get those points. We since passed our second. DIPCAC was out here November before last, conducting their second on-site high confidence assessment, and we got a 110 out of 110. But part of that in that journey was we realized that commercial service provider that was running SOC services was just simply not meeting our requirements. Not only were they using a follow the sun model, which created problems for us, not only did they have a lot of turnover, they didn't have the same mindset as we did, and we were finding things well in advance than they were. So that created some challenges for us. And then we had this crazy idea: what would it take to bring that capability back in-house? And then also looking out and talking with our supply chain, which we have well over 2,000 members in our supply chain, and then other companies, we realized, well, there's really nobody providing this type of service specifically tailored to the DIB. And so we set about doing that, and couldn't be more proud of the team. We started onboarding customers about 2 years ago, and we have picked up things that other organizations just have completely missed, including pre-zero day attacks in the last couple of years. And then going all the way back to SolarWinds, we were one of the very few companies that detected that and stopped it early. When was that? It was in the 2021 timeframe, I believe. But again, we had no context until later that year of what had actually happened. We detected that anomalous behavior and then stopped that platform from dialing out. So super proud of the team. That's kind of our backstory as to how we established Defensible. And then really, at the end of the day, the same exact platform, the same team that is protecting us and all of our critical programs can now protect you. That's a lot, Megan. Sorry.
No, thank you.
you.
We're beyond ecstatic to be partnered with SNC Defensible, and we are better together. So that was a great overview, and thank you for sharing the story. I love that story. So, putting it all together, when you, the GovCon, chooses the right ESP, everything comes together harmoniously, and similar to like SNC and NeoSystems, things just click. So suddenly you're not managing compliance, you're leveraging an economy of scale. You get to continue to focus on what truly matters to you, growing your business and securing your contracts. And so leveraging ESPs turns an otherwise capital expense into a predictable, reasonable fee that can be allocated as an operational expense, ultimately saving you money. And the best ESPs have already done the homework. They've already vetted the tools, they've vetted that, they've made the investments in the people, the capabilities. They've brought the most qualified CSPs or MSSPs to deliver best in breed solutions to you. So for you, that means inheriting a total solution without the headaches, risks, and runaway costs of trying to build it alone. You get to play ball and you get to win. Caveat emptor. Not all ESPs are created equal. And if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So when a provider claims these things here, 100% CMMC compliance, you really should ask them, which of the 110 controls are you handling? Are the responsibilities shared, or are you assuming full responsibility for those requirements? And with CMMC rolling out, there's so many providers coming out of the woodworks that are, promising quick, guaranteed compliance. But there's no easy button for CMMC. There's no easy button for securing CUI or meeting NIST 800-171. It takes time. CMMC takes time, and real compliance requires planning, execution, and validation. So does anybody want to see a sneak peek of what it looks like when things go well? With the right partner, your CMMC assessment can resemble a big happy ice cream party. Just make sure you have a clear understanding of what they will be bringing to the table. Are they bringing just the ice cream, or is it up to you to supply the whipped cream and sprinkles? What about the spoons? So when you're choosing the best ESPs, what do you consider? And this is really important. You really want to ask them for a customer responsibility matrix. You want to ask what of those NIST 800-171 requirements do they meet and manage versus what falls on you? And then do you have the capabilities to handle those that do fall on you? Are they being transparent about where their responsibility starts and ends? Do they have experience implementing NIST 800-171 requirements, and can they share references? Do they specialize in supporting DoD contractors? Or, as Robert was mentioning, are they just repackaging commercial services? It's a big difference, right? What's not included in the monthly fees, what's not included is in the monthly fees that you're going to be paying extra for. And if they manage CUI or SPD, are their capabilities CMMC compliant? Are they on a path, or have they already achieved their CMMC level 2 or higher if applicable? So make sure the CSP is listed on the FedRAMP marketplace. That's another question. And when it comes to government regulations, there's no in between. You're either compliant or you're not. So the right provider will not only check these boxes, but they'll actively be working with you to ensure your security posture, simplify your compliance burden, and protect your long-term business interests. So choose wisely. We've covered a lot today. I want to thank you all so much for your time, spending the time with us. We've defined all the flavors of ESPs, their role and value to the defense contractor and DIB and CMMC ecosystem. We've broken down the typical services and requirements provided by each. We've discussed the importance of the customer responsibility matrix and how you can leverage that as an accountability tool. And we've provided some qualifying questions to ask when choosing a provider. we've even shared some footage of what an actual successful CMMC assessment might look like. Thank you for spending the time, and now we'd love to turn it back over to you for questions.
Thank you, Megan. As Megan mentioned, this is the time we've got a few minutes for question and answer session. So if you have any questions, please enter them into that Q&A area within the Zoom meeting window, and we'll get to a few of those here in the next few minutes. We have had a couple questions come in, Megan, Robert, that I wanted to pose to you. One is, if I was starting from scratch, how much time would it take me to be ready to pass a CMMC audit?
I'll take this one, Don. Thank you. So great question. And if you are an organization that's been around for some time, you have enterprise systems, you have legacy systems, you have a hybrid, you're using some cloud, you've got a lot of stuff on-prem, and you're just starting now, you could easily be looking at a 12 to 18 month long slog if you're going to do it yourself. It's as Megan said, it's a lot of work. You have to do the work. There are no shortcuts. And if you don't have the expertise, you better start looking for it now, because it's really starting to come into, basically become high demand, and there are not as many resources as what you might think. And we're also hearing horror stories of people that have picked up the wrong organization to help them, and now they're having to pay for the same real estate twice, unfortunately. So horror stories are starting to emerge. But you are looking at, if you have legacy systems, existing environments, enterprise scale services, you're looking at 12 plus months easy. If you're just starting out and you're a small, let's say you're a small fabrication shop, you don't have a lot of IT systems, IT duties are extra for somebody, you don't have dedicated staff, but for a fact you've got the DFARS flow down in the clause, and you know that you're going to have to handle CUI. The best thing that you can do is look for a managed service provider to build you an enclave, and then you can put all of that work inside that enclave. You are compliant from day one, and that eliminates all the worry about time and resources to be able to get to compliance. And you can do it much quicker. Typically within a couple of months they can be fully operational. So that'd be my recommendation.
Absolutely. And yeah, I would even add more time to that. I would say 12 to 18 months if you've got an extremely savvy IT and cybersecurity engineer, or a team in-house. I've seen firsthand contractors make the wrong investments, continue down that path for a long time, and then have to rip and replace and start over again for just not making the right decision and not being advised, or just not knowing. And it's common. So don't make those mistakes if you don't have to. Don't do it yourself if you don't have to. I have to provide the shameless plug that NeoSystems does provide secure enclave solutions. So there is a solution out there for you that is move-in ready. So I would definitely consider that. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, there's actually a follow-up to that question, Megan and Robert, which is, how much faster would that process be if I used an external service provider rather than going it alone?
Megan, I'll let you go for timing on like MSP. I know that what it takes to onboard a customer over here for Defensible, how long that takes.
Sure. It's hard to say exactly, right? Every organization has varying complexity, different environments. So it's hard to say 6 months to a year. I would say significantly faster. And, sometimes there will need to be some tech debt, or sometimes sometimes things you can move right into that secure environment. Sometimes there's a migration that has to take place, a change out of tools. If, for example, if you're using legacy systems that aren't compliant or just aren't going to be CMMC ready, there's some work that needs to be done. But the thing with what's important is knowing that if you're working with the right ESP, the right MSP, they've been there, they've done that, and they're going to give you that proven path forward versus you making the wrong investments or having to start over again. So it's going to significantly accelerate your path to compliance at the end of the day.
And also kind of what services that an organization might be looking at. So if they're in the process of maybe converting to a cloud-based service, say like an M365 for office tools, Teams, SharePoint, things like that, you should start talking to somebody like Megan now because they can save you time. They've been through those migrations, with organizations. They could probably help you make some really good decisions and save money as well as time. I know that we did a significant migration into the cloud starting a couple of years ago. We went to Exchange Online just as picking out one service of everything that we deployed. That process took us about a year worth of planning and then piloting and then gradually moving people from on-prem Exchange into Exchange Online. So again, it depends on your size and how much legacy and tech debt you got to work with,
Yep.
to get up and operational. On the defensible side, we try to provide value as fast as we can because in some cases, a customer may know that they have a problem or suspect they have a problem, and they want us to either alleviate those concerns or confirm it as soon as possible. So it depends on how mature you are as an organization for logging, how much data you have from a logging perspective. Typically, we need about 30 days to establish a baseline of what normal looks like for your employees and your systems. We'll really work hard to try to get somebody operational and start to provide value within just about 30 days. So it does take some time. There is no easy button for any of the things that we're talking about. But you are, with the folks on the call here in this partnership, we can get you there faster.
All right, thank you, Robert and Megan. We have time for one more question that I want to put out here. This question is in regard to the NIST regulations. How will MSPs address NIST 800-171 Rev 3 when it comes into effect, and what does that transition period look like?
So Rev 3 is, obviously it's on the horizon, so we're all aware that it's coming. And those MSPs that have already established compliance with level 2 are going to be that much quicker to adopt the next level of requirements and prepare those prepare for that transition. So I think that you're more savvy, you're more sophisticated, you're more those MSPs that are already doing the right things, have already implemented NIST and already have those compliance services are going to have a leg up on other MSPs that are still working towards their compliance. But when Rev 3 is released, that's going to be the requirement for everybody. So similar to what we're looking at now with level 2, R3 is going to also, it's just going to be the requirement. It's going to be the status quo. I don't know if that answered your question, but it's a good question.
Yeah, Don, we started tracking it when it was available in draft, so we could track the changes between the two. We also are closely following 172. That would be the requirement for CMMC level 3. So we anticipate that as a defense contractor, we are going to have contracts that require us to have some environments to be at level 3 when that is finalized. So we've been tracking all of this for some time now.
All right, thank you. So I think that'll do it for our Q&A session. Megan, if you wouldn't mind moving to that final slide. This will conclude today's webinar. As you can see, the contact information for Megan and Robert is right there on the screen. If you have any additional questions for them, please feel free to reach out to them. We will be following up in the next couple of days with an email to all registrants that will provide a link to the presentation slides as well as the webinar recording for all of you to access at your convenience. So again, thank you for your time today. We appreciate your attendance and have a great day. Goodbye.